I think that many of the early adopters in the light passenger space have already bought or put their money down.
Right, rates are not keeping anybody from buying a car right now. I mean, the Tesla cars have dropped in price by over $10,000 a vehicle. So, rates aren't, the issue clearly.
All that and more. So let's get to it. Tesla stock finished down at the closing bell on Friday, almost 2%, sitting at 248.49. Not a whole lot of movement in the after hours thus far. Kind of an anticlimactic finish to the year of 2023. For the week, Tesla stock is down a little over 1.5%. For the month, however, up over 2.5%. Going back 3 months, Tesla's up only 1.5%. Tesla basically trading sideways for the past 3 months with an extreme amount of volatility in the middle. And it appears Tesla will end a little bit under 110% year to date. With a record Q4 around the corner, I wonder what that'll mean for the stock.
You look at 2023, it looks like, Bill, consumer demand for the EVs, at least in North America, kind of seems to be waning here a bit, Bill. What are the issues, and do you expect that to change in 2024?
What we saw in 2023 were some pretty interesting headwinds. I think some of the supplier elements were balanced, so that's good. But I think people, as you just mentioned in your last segment, found, you know what, hey, building vehicles is can be tough, particularly if you're a new company that's starting out with it. I think that many of the early adopters in the light passenger space have already bought or put their money down on a vehicle. And I think what you're going to find is that you get to that next level adopter, they're going to look to things like battery density, eliminate range anxiety, try to find some additional electric vehicle charging stations and network. Going from 200, 500 charging stations to 20,000, 500,000 is a whole different matter. So I do think that there's been a little ebb off the hype curve there, and I think that some of the OEMs are starting to reconsider what their portfolio and volumes will be going into 2024.
I don't know, is it just me, or do they make it seem like the early adopters, myself included, we're not gonna ever buy another EV again? With the addition of Panda, our new Model X, that's our third Tesla that we've bought. The next generation of EV consumers, they're gonna wonder how come there's so many Teslas on the road. Some of them will even be brave enough to ask, how do you like that thing? Is that thing all right? And the overwhelming response from most Tesla drivers will be, I'm never going back. This is the only thing I could possibly drive. And I would agree. There is a charging infrastructure problem throughout the country for anyone not driving a Tesla so far. In the coming years, all battery electric vehicles, it seems, will have access in some way, shape, or form to the Tesla supercharging network. So if you choose to have a subpar battery electric vehicle, you don't have to worry about range anxiety. I get it, that's probably your starter EV. You'll eventually join the Tesla family once you realize you deserve better.
You mentioned some of these headwinds, and we saw companies like Ford and GM pull back on those EV investments this year after highly touting them for a year or two before that. What are some of the things that you're seeing from like a headwinds point of view that continue going into 2024? I mean, we're seeing EV sales growing, but they're also sort of not growing fast enough. Is it more of a case of high prices, high rates, things like that?
Bring up a really good point, Pras. I mean, you're in the upper segment now for most of the EV offerings. So you mentioned General Motors. General Motors just went through their culling of their Buick dealerships. Half of them won't join the EV journey, so you kind of have to get that square right with your distribution framework. Guess what? We also had a little bit of a labor discussion. Thankfully, it ended up before Halloween, but guess what? That price factor is being built in, and it doesn't matter if you were part of the UAW or the Canadian discussion. You're also being part of the opt-in. So all the people who are not unionized are building in 9, 10, 12% labor costs uplifts. That all has to be pushed down into the suppliers. Suppliers have a lot different elements to build in terms of EV, less mechanical parts, in many cases very different design elements. So it's really going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out, not just from the consumer side, but from the supplier sourcing side.
The macroeconomic issues here in the United States, interest rates are coming down. Not only that, but if you're building battery electric vehicles, the cost of those things are coming down as well. And if you're doing it right, allowing you to maintain industry-leading margins while knocking out the highest level of production of battery electric vehicles. But I assume this man is talking about headwinds for companies not named Tesla.
And Bill, I also want to get your take on the market over there in China for EVs, and names like BYD. Bloomberg saying BYD will actually surpass Tesla as the new worldwide leader in EV sales, likely in the current quarter, Bill. How do you see that market in China evolving? I mean, it certainly has the support of the government over there. How does it evolve, Bill? And what does that, by the way, mean for U.S. companies like Tesla?
So, if you build to market, obviously China is one of the largest markets in the world. Interesting industrial point from respect to China. China actually has quite a bit of electrical grid potential available, and so they don't frankly build as many combustion engine cars. So their electrification is very nuanced around their government policy and their energy policy to have many power plants that generate the electricity versus trying to be part of the petro economy as many of the rest of the world will be, frankly, for a very long time. So I think there's that, and I think that you're also seeing some, not just in China, but you're seeing some of the Asia Pacific companies, VinFast is one, take advantage of some of the IRA funding and some of the infrastructure bill opportunities available to help offset some of their expansion in the world's largest market right here in the US and North America. So again, very interesting to watch. You're right, keep an eye on China, but also see how they play into this market. Two very different markets, two very different energy frameworks, and two very different industrial policies.
Make no mistake, the United States, when it comes to electrification, will follow the way of EU and ultimately China. And guess what? The infrastructure will follow. The electricity demands are going to double, if not triple, within the next couple of decades. All forms of energy are going to be required to make this inevitable transition.
What do you think are some of the big catalysts next year that could drive some EV growth? For instance, is it the point of sale EV tax credit happening at the dealer level? Is it maybe finally more cheaper EVs coming? What do you think is going to sort of drive more sales potentially next year?
Yeah, well, I think you hit on a few of them right there, and so let's double click on those, right? So obviously there's range anxiety, so getting above that 500 mile per charge. So I think there's some really good innovations that are coming out that we've seen developing, not only just with respect to battery technology from precious heavy metals, but also from synthetics, silicone, for an example, other designs. I think you're going to see pushing into that mid-range. We mentioned earlier in our conversation here that most of the EVs have been in the kind of the luxury category, and so now as we start to push in, keep an eye on GM's Equinox, right? I can. Depending on what kind of luxury I want, I can, push into that for under 40K. Now you're making that available. Also keep an eye on interest rates. Interest rates for car and homes seem to be taking a bit of a pleasant drop in the last, 3-4 weeks. So obviously the Fed has an influence on that. And again, just, keep in touch, around the availability for charging, and as I like to tell, my kids who are grown adults, if you really want to make a difference now, you can still look at a plug-in electric hybrid. I know it's not cool as, maybe some of the other models that are out there. Sorry, I'm just kind of, more mature in the market here, but they are California 2035 compliant as well as many parts of other countries. So maybe there's some additional options that just people haven't thought of because we've been so caught up on the hype curve, right?
Doing everything he can, not to mention Tesla. You know what his kids want. They don't want no plug-in hybrid. The Chevy Equinox under 40 grand. Yeah, I'm sure I'm taking the Equinox over the Tesla Model Y. Not only the best-selling EV, but one of the best-selling vehicles in the world. The EV headwinds for legacy auto manufacturers and some of these startups is absolutely there. But as Tesla releases their Q4 numbers, it's going to feel like none of that applies to the sexy lineup.
You could describe it in the simplest way. Why did Apple make records and Tesla didn't?
Well, first of all, Tesla's not doing anything to sell cars. I don't know if you've noticed, now removing the Disney app because of some tiff with Elon and X. So, Tesla is down, 30-40% from the high 2 years ago while the market's recovered. And that's 100% a byproduct of Twitter. And we know that.
Sounds like that spread of performance between Apple and Tesla you would attribute to the word Elon, not rates.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Rates are not keeping anybody from buying a car right now. I mean, the Tesla cars have dropped in price by over $10,000 a vehicle. So, rates aren't, the issue clearly. And I've seen a lot of car companies subsidizing rates as well. What we're really seeing across the board is people not thrilled with the brand, unfortunately. But also Tesla's making no attempt to sell vehicles, and everybody who has an EV, who wanted an EV, has bought an EV. So if you're going to educate the other 90% of the market, then you'll have more customers.
Ross Gerber obviously has a problem with the way Elon does business. He doesn't agree with whatever Elon posts on X. Elon is damaging the brand, this, that, and the other. It's all lip service to explain why the stock isn't doing as well as it once was a couple of years ago. And there may be some modicum of truth to that. If Elon just shut his mouth and did nothing, maybe the stock would soar, maybe it wouldn't, who knows? But the point I'm trying to make is that you're never going to change Elon. And if your answer is to remove Elon from the equation, that addition by subtraction doesn't quite work. His track record is impeccable. The ability to rally the team around the Model 3, FSD, the Cybertruck ramp, Optimus. There are so many things that we can't even see that requires Elon's meticulous attention to detail. All this talk about getting the rest of the population into EVs, with a 10% is already bought EVs, and they're going to continue to buy them because they're great. The other 90%, Tesla can't make cars for those motherfuckers just yet. In due time, Ross. The education process is happening gradually, as it should, considering Tesla can't produce over 6 million of these cars right now. My like trying to put the cart before the horse. That make no sense.
Okay. Do you think this is a issue that is solvable while Musk is still involved with X? I know that you've talked this past year a good bit that you think it's a big distraction for him. So if something doesn't change there, so we assume then Tesla underperforms?
Well, I think if you want to take sort of Elon out of the whole equation and you just look at numbers, Tesla's the highest PE stock that we own, really, in the sense of, what are they supposed to earn? Bloomberg says $3.90 as a compilation of all their analysts for 24, and that puts that PE ratio well above 60. And when you look at a forward PE of a great company in our fund, GK, called NVIDIA, with a forward PE of 24, and literally the hardware leader in the AI revolution that even Tesla and Elon's buying chips from left and right, it seems like on a relative valuation, NVIDIA is a much better investment than Tesla. So I think Tesla's biggest issue is simply its valuation, irrelevant of Musk and all the other things that he's doing to compress the PE.
That price earnings is relatively low, but none of these Wall Street analysts are expecting Tesla to grow nearly as fast as Tesla does, which leaves a huge vacuum in EPS, not to mention all the deferred revenue that Tesla is acquiring through FSD. I wonder what that'll do for the earnings per share when they add the deferred revenue to the balance sheet. Maybe, we'll see.
Yeah, all right. So the valuation here has some growing into to be done. The Cybertruck verdict, when do you think that'll get rendered? Next year's calendar. I mean, I would imagine a year from now we should have, we should be seeing all the trucks lined up ready to deliver.
Yeah, I mean, I think ramping this is going to be very difficult for Tesla as a new vehicle, as they've struggled with every new vehicle they've launched, and this is a new type of metal and stamping process and new technology. So I'm really excited for what's in the Cybertruck and for what that means for Tesla long term. But the addressable market for this vehicle is somewhat limited in its design. Its production, we hope for next year to do at least 50,000 vehicles, but this doesn't really move the needle for Tesla on profits and revenue when you look at selling 2 million plus, Model Ys and 3s. So I think the Cybertruck is really just a cool vehicle and really meant to help sell other Teslas and really give you an idea of what's in store technology-wise for the future. But as far as for the stock, I think it's already priced in.
You almost view it as like a loss leader, not like a literal loss leader, but it seems like you kind of view it that way right now.
Well, they're charging 120K. They're actually, it's the opposite. They're the people buying these First Cybertrucks are making a nice $20,000 donation to Tesla. So it's not a loss leader at all. In fact, I would argue the opposite. This is where they're trying to make some margin.
Right.
100% agree with Ross there. I don't expect them to make too many of these things initially. Somewhere in that Model S and X category, though, I think they'll be shoved into that as well. So the numbers won't be very clear. I can't wait to see the financial report come out. Once they get to any meaningful level of production, like over 50,000 a year, 100,000 a year, they might break it off into its own category. This is going to have the widest range of affordability. Down from 60,000 to 100,000 will be the range that this vehicle can be priced at. But you won't see any real meaningful volumes until a couple of years from now. But that halo effect, while the Cybertruck production numbers are limited, all the other Tesla models are going to be looked at by potential buyers. Website traffic is up over 50%. Consumers educating themselves on the Tesla lineup. In conclusion, we get a broader look at the EV outlook for 2024. Some pretty good information for every OEM not named Tesla. The internal combustion engine is dead, as evident in Chinese markets and over there in Europe. North America will also follow these trend lines. And Ross Gerber has some choice words for Elon. To sum it up, hey Elon, you're doing it wrong. I just think money managers that point to Elon and say this is why Tesla is doing so bad, that's just some low-hanging fruit. There may be some shred of truth to it, but who gives a shit? Elon's antics does not change the fundamentals that you should be basing your evaluations on. That's all I got for you today. Be easy. Peace.